Hi, everyone. This is another podcast from We Talk Science. Thank you very much for joining us today. Today we have Jessica Alleva from the University of Maastricht joining us. Hi, Jessica. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you very much. Again, thank you very much for joining us. I'm very interested in hearing about what it is that you do at in Maastricht University. So why don't we just start off by having you introduce yourself to us?
Sure. Well, as you said, my name is Dr. Jessica Alleva, and I'm an assistant professor at Maastricht University in the Netherlands in the Eating Disorders and Obesity Research Group. My research concerns body image, which basically means how people think and feel about their body, and I'm particularly interested in helping people to develop a more positive body image. I've been working in this area for about 10 years now. I'm originally from Canada, but now I've been living in the Netherlands for 15 years. And I really love the work that I do, the research and teaching on this topic.
So how did you get into this field? What inspired you to actually step into this field of body image, eating disorders, and I guess the word is dysmorphia. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, actually, like you, funny enough, I used to study like biology and like the hard sciences, let's say. My plan was to become a medical doctor, and during my placements in hospitals, I actually felt I felt sad that I didn't have more contact on a personal level with patients. I missed the psychology aspect of it. And at the same time, being a young woman, I just moved to the Netherlands doing my bachelor. A lot of my peers and my friends were struggling with body image issues. And I saw like the way that it impacted their life, like it became their everything, these worries about their appearance, about exercising and dieting. And I would say to them, like, you're beautiful the way you are, like, love and accept your body. And then they would say, like, well, you're doing the same thing. And I was like, oh, shoot, they're right. So looking at myself, I had a really unhealthy relationship with my body and with food. And those two things combined made me started this journey of trying to learn more about where do these body image issues come from, my own, but also for other women, other people. And that got me really interested into the psychology end of things. And I kind of switched gears. And after my bachelor, did a master in psychopathology here at Maastricht University. And I just kept going on this journey of learning about body image and eating disorders. And at the end of the master, there was a PhD opening on the topic of improving body image. And I was like, wow, this is made for me. This is like my dream topic. And I ended up receiving the position. And ever since then, I've been researching this topic. So it began as like a motivation to try and understand, like, why am I and other people my age and people in general experiencing this? And also thinking about like, what could we be doing with our time and energy if we were not so wrapped up in our worries about our body and feeling bad about how we look.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So let's go back to the basics, because as I said to you before, I don't know very much about social sciences. So talking about the psychology of body issues, where does it, how does it start? So where does it start, and why does this actually happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's a really great question. It's not a simple answer, but in general, like from the body image researcher perspective, we tend to see that there's three main bodies of influence, let's say, on how people feel about their body. The first of them being your family. So, for instance, what a lot of people experience is seeing, for instance, their mother being really unhappy with her body, making negative comments around food, saying that she thinks she's ugly and wants to lose weight, and just learning already at an early age, appearance is something that is important, that is something that other people will evaluate me based on, and then children learn to turn that perspective toward themselves. Or sometimes people in the family might even make negative comments about the child themselves, picking on them for their weight or saying, should you really be eating that? And even appearance compliments can teach children, like, oh, appearance is something that is valuable and other people judge me based on. The second like main body of influence is friends. So what are your peers saying about your appearance? What do they say about their own body? Who do they look up to? For instance, like on social media, who are they following and find beautiful and want to emulate? this can have a big impact on your developing body image. And then the third one, which is a monstrous one, is media. So what do we see in media in terms of what is presented as the ideal body for men and women and other people? And also in media, we see not only this idealized image of beauty, but also that it's paired and linked with all these other positive life outcomes. So we learn like, oh, if I look like that person, I'll be more happy and I'll be successful and I'll be popular. And therefore we also learn how important beauty is, what is considered beautiful, and if we don't achieve that, then we feel bad about ourselves. So these kind of three things lead to us comparing ourselves to an appearance-related norm. And since everything we see in media is like very an unrealistic norm, yeah, it inevitably leads to us feeling worse about ourselves, and also to us internalizing this idea of what is beautiful and why it's important, and really believing that in ourselves and wanting to achieve that. And then from that step, this leads to negative body image. So this is kind of the general overarching model of how we understand the development of negative body image.
Okay, so that is really interesting. Let's stay with the individual for a moment. So what kind of psychological changes, do you see happening over age, for example? I mean, in the beginning, in the toddler age, I'm guessing that children are very much accepting of each other, of course, right? And they're very much accepting of themselves. When does this actually start to change? And is there a difference between boys and girls? I mean, just to stick with the gender binary for a minute. When does this actually start happening?
Yeah, it's exactly what you said. If I also look at my 2.5-year-old son, like he loves his reflection in the mirror. He'll walk around in his underwear and just be like confident and happy and no self-concerns whatsoever. And at daycare, obviously they're not commenting on each other. And the research shows that this tends to begin around 4, 5, 6 years old already, that children already then develop an idea of like what is considered beautiful, and like they begin to have concerns about their weight. Already little girls will be worried about their tummy or about not being thin or tall enough, and boys as well being worried about their weight and about muscularity at a very, very young age. And that tends to be the distinction, that girls will begin to have concern about not being thin enough, not being like tall enough, whereas boys, it's about like muscularity and leanness and strength. And that's kind of like how it continues to develop into adolescence and adulthood, with these two main focuses for girls and boys. And I would say also that in general, appearance concerns and appearance dissatisfaction are more common among girls and women compared to among boys and men.
And does this also extend into, so we stuck with the gender binary for that part of the question, but does this also occur with the LGBTQI plus community, for example? Do you find that there are differences in how much they value or how they view their body, especially for, I'm guessing, for trans people or people who think that they might be trans? This is a huge issue for them as well, I'm guessing.
Yeah, definitely. So among trans people, there isn't that much research, unfortunately, on body image among trans people, so it's an area that still needs to be like dived into more deeply. But the research that there is indeed shows that trans people, especially before the age or the opportunity that they've been able to transition, experience a more negative body image compared to non-trans people, because of that they feel they're not in the right body, that their body doesn't match their identified gender, and this is kind of a different source of negative body image for them compared to people who are cisgender. But overall, the research shows that there's this additional layer of negative body image that they have to struggle with.
Yeah. That's unfortunate. I think, I hope that somebody out there is doing a little bit more research on on this particular topic.
Yeah.
Okay. As a society, if you go back into history, for example, I mean, these days we are inundated, obviously, not just by media images, but social media. In the past, 10 years, there has been such an explosion of information at your fingertips. Have you seen a corresponding sort of trend in negative body image and body dysmorphia in the past 10 years, for example, compared to what actually we had before?
Yeah, the interesting thing is that for women, there's been a study looking at over the past years, has negative body image increased, and they find that among women it's kind of stabilized. where negative body image isn't increasing, but for men it is increasing. And one of the reasons they theorize about that is because we still have these unrealistic beauty ideals for women, but at the same time there's kind of now a counter movement of the body positivity movement and more acceptance. There's still not enough acceptance in my opinion, but more representation and more acceptance of women of different body sizes and shapes and ages and so on. And women's exposure to this on social media, that they can access it, that they can share those images, is proposed to actually positively impact women's body image, that they see, I can love and accept my body even if I don't look like these beauty ideals, and also be exposed to other women who are promoting the same. So that can kind of provide like a counter influence to all these beauty ideal images. Where at the same time, like for men, there's this increasing emphasis actually on this male beauty ideal. And there isn't to the same extent a counter movement of body positivity for men. And as you mentioned, just with the proliferation of social media, researchers actually say like the impact of social media on our body image can actually be stronger than like the more traditional forms of media, because for instance, it's always at our fingertips, as you described. We can always access it, whereas before maybe we watch a movie for 2 hours and then it's done. And at the same time, social media is also more about people who we perceive to be similar to us. For instance, fitness influencers or models, and on social media they present themselves as being relatable and like very similar to you, or it's your friends and peers. And interestingly, research shows when we compare ourselves to people that we perceive to be more similar to us, the impact of those comparisons is actually even stronger than if it's like a celebrity that we think, oh, that's not even like me at all, like I can't achieve that. But if it's someone you perceive to be similar to you, then you feel like, oh, I could reach that, but I don't, and that person can do it, why can't I? And you feel even more negatively about yourself. So that could be a reason why seeing the beauty ideal on social media might have a stronger impact than, for instance, looking at it in a magazine.
That's really interesting. Now, first of all, I'm actually, very delighted to hear that the counter movement, because I have seen it, of course, also on social media. Some of the people that I follow on Instagram, for example, are these women who are athletes, for example, but they look, they don't look like the ideal, image that you would have of beauty that you have in everybody's minds. And I'm happy to hear that is actually making a difference. Because there is so much, there's definitely, obviously you choose who you follow as well, but there's definitely a movement, and I think it first started with Dove. So the Dove commercials really started this movement of body positivity, didn't they? And like I said, I'm delighted to hear that that is actually making a difference, and I'm pretty sure that there will be a counter movement for the men as well. Fingers crossed. So this is all incredibly interesting, and obviously I'm so happy that people are actually studying it as a science. Because this is stuff that our kids are being exposed to, of course, these days too. So tell me more about what it is that you have done. So I know that you're doing some really cool research on in this area. And there was a recent paper that you published on body weight in women. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So my research actually, like at the beginning of my PhD, started that we had a totally different plan of what we specifically wanted to research with respect to body image. But my supervisor at the time, Dr. Caroline Martijn, she said to me, like, why don't you first, to get started, do some reading and see, like, let's do a small experiment on something that you just specifically want to do. So I did a lot of reading on body image, and I was like, all of this stuff about body image is about how people think and feel about their appearance, and that makes sense, of course, because we're presented with these unrealistic appearance norms. But we were having a talk and we were like, well, actually your body isn't only how you look, it's also about all of the things that your body can do. And we just had this idea, like, what if we ask people to think about the things that their body can do rather than thinking about their appearance, and how would this affect how they feel about themselves? So we just did a series of like really simple experiments where we had young women and men, and in a second study, women between 30 and 50, just simply write about what my body can do, and then another group what my body looks like, and another group as like a control or placebo, they had to describe their route to the university or to work. And from that experiment, we found that actually, at least among the young men and the older group of women, that this had a really positive effect on how they viewed their body, just from this very short writing exercise. And then we thought, specifically writing about what their body can do compared to appearance. And from there, we thought, let's expand this into a more broad program where women are going to be reflecting more carefully on all the different things that their body can do and why that's valuable to them. And also from the first study, like basically the concept that I'm talking about, by the way, is body functionality. And then we describe this as everything your body is able to do. And from that very first study, we discovered that people identify 6 main categories of body functions. So physical capacities like eating and digesting food, bodily senses like sight and sound, creative endeavors like being able to paint, communicating with others like giving someone a hug or using your body to communicate with body language, self-care, so being able to take care of yourself by showering and bathing, and physical capacities, so like moving, for instance, cycling or stretching. And then we use this information in our next study to create this program, an online program where in 3 different writing exercises, women would reflect on all these different categories of body functionality and write about what their body can do, but also why that's personally meaningful to them and valuable to them. And our overall goal was to try to shift their perspective from thinking about their body in terms of how it looks and in terms of weight and shape towards seeing all of the valuable things their body can do. And we also thought this would be meaningful because in our first study, we received a lot of feedback from women like, oh, I hadn't thought about my body this way before. I usually just think about my body in terms of my weight and shape and all the things I don't like. And this is really meaningful to me, and I want to keep thinking about my body in this way. So we created this online program, and since then we tested it in different experiments, and overall the research shows that compared to control programs or placebo programs, this program of focusing on appreciating your body functionality leads to improvements in all different areas of body image, such as feeling more appreciative of your body, feeling more accepting and loving toward your body, even feeling more satisfied with your appearance, interestingly. And viewing your body like more holistically. So as I described, not just viewing it in terms of like weight and shape, but seeing it more as like a holistic entity, if you will, in terms of all these different things it can do. And that's been really, really interesting and really great to see that this program has such a positive impact. We have yet to test the full program among men, so we've just done that really initial study among young men, but we have now tested the expanded program, which we call Expand Your Horizon, among different groups of women. For instance, women with a negative body image already at the beginning, women with rheumatoid arthritis. We're now testing it among mothers who have young children. It's also being tested among people who have a visible difference. And to date, which I thought was really cool to see, a recent review of programs on increasing positive body image has shown that this approach is currently the most effective program to improve positive body image. So it's been a really valuable research line, I think. And that's kind of where we're at right now, is like exploring more this idea of what happens when you ask people to focus on their body functionality and on appreciating what their body can do.
That's amazing. I mean, just thinking about how much. I mean, this hits home for me as well. I mean, so that makes me. Well, it's a matter of psychological change, isn't it? That you think about your body in a different way, rather than the way that media and people around you pretty much have been telling you to do that. So it's almost like a deprogramming and reprogramming psychological sort of step that one has to make.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so looking at, for example, I mean, you mentioned, of course, people with a visible sort of difference in their appearance and things like that. There is, of course, the overweight population, right? And I think we've all heard stories where you would walk into, as an overweight person, you would walk into a doctor's office, and the medical sort of care attention would always be on the weight, like you are experiencing all of these symptoms because of your weight.
Yeah.
How does your research apply to changing the medical profession in that sense, and the opinions of that the doctors and maybe even psychologists and psychiatrists have for people like this?
Yeah, that's a huge problem, actually. So weight stigma and having negative attitudes about people of higher body weight is common pretty much in every area of life. Also, actually within, for instance, the eating disorders field, or people studying obesity or even in body image in some researchers. So it really is everywhere. We actually did a study recently building on this idea of appreciating body functionality, where we looked at how can we help people to develop more positive attitudes toward people of higher body weight and to experience less weight stigma. Because I do feel like the onus for change should be on people who are doing the stigmatizing and not on people who are experiencing weight stigma to change how they manage it. So we did an experiment where we had people, we presented them with an image of a woman of higher body weight and we called her Anne. And in one group, people were asked to write about the different things that Anne could do with her body and why that would be meaningful to her. So kind of applying this idea of functionality appreciation, but toward the perspective of another person. And this was actually the first time we tested this different approach. And then in the other group, the participants were asked to describe Anne's home and the details of her home as a comparison. And we found that the women who were asked to reflect on Anne's body functionality and why it's valuable to her experienced increases in fat acceptance and less weight stigma towards Anne, but also towards people of higher body weight in general. And so this is just our first experiment on that. Of course, we have to do more research, but it shows like how important it is to not view someone based solely on their physical appearance and to draw negative conclusions based on that. And in the context of our study, it shows that it's important to also see the person in terms of all of the wonderful and meaningful things that they can do and also like why that's important to them as a person. So moving beyond this really narrow view of judging people based on their body weight and making conclusions about them as a person or what they can do. So ideally, of course, it's quite a jump to then apply that, for instance, to medical professionals. But that would be, first of all, I think in a lot of medical studies, there isn't enough attention to psychology and to stigma and to the impact of stigma. And I think a lot of people like to think of themselves like, oh, I don't stigmatize people. But it's so ingrained in society and media that we don't notice when we're doing it. So I think it should definitely be part of training, and maybe, for instance, with respect to this experiment, showing like viewing people more in terms of what they're able to do and what is important to them, and seeing them more as a person instead of reducing them to their body weight.
Yeah. I think that's really, really important. So tell me about cultural differences, because it occurs to me that, of course, in different places, there are different standards of beauty and of, what a good body image, what a good, nice looking body should look like, for want of a better word. For example, I think, you could, in some cultures, maybe a big set of ears is considered, beautiful versus, other cultures. So does this technique that you mentioned also work across the cultures? Because, I'm guessing that there are, like I said, very different beauty standards in different places.
Yeah. That's a really excellent question. I think I have to say again, unfortunately, that a lot of body image research to date has mainly been done in the UK and Australia and in the US. So we still need a lot more diversity in terms of the research. I think in general, the approach can be beneficial because across many cultures, you see that there is a beauty ideal. It's increasingly becoming westernized, that, for instance, we're doing now research among women in China, and there you also see that they're developing more Western ideal of beauty. So across cultures, there are beauty ideals, which are becoming increasingly the same, and also that people then aim toward those beauty ideals, feel bad about themselves if they don't achieve it, and link all kinds of life outcomes to achieving that beauty ideal. So in that sense, I think I would expect across cultures for this to be a valuable approach of developing a more holistic view of your body. But we've yet to test that. I do know, for instance, sometimes when I've had comments from reviewers on our manuscripts, like, oh, this would be really interesting to test among that culture, because I know there that there are also ideals with respect to what men can do with their body, and men are really negatively valued if they cannot do certain things with their body. And I think across cultures that holds the same, that even with respect to body functionality, there are also ideals of what a normal body should be able to do and what you should be able to achieve with your body. So even there, we have to be careful of not trying to achieve like one ideal of body functionality, but even there accepting what can my body do and why is that valuable to me, irrespective of what society says my body should be able to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, coming back to the influence of media, I mean, what would you say is the biggest sort of responsibility of the media? So, for example, I think that maybe you've seen this as well. There was this picture of, you know what? I've forgotten the name, but it's one of the Kardashians, right?
Okay.
Or the Jenners,
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, so she posted a picture of herself, and the caption was, this is what the perfect female body should look like. And for me, I would say 99.9% of us women will never be able to achieve this body image ever. And I remember that literally just a few days ago, I remember reading in an interview that was done by maybe another person, and it was essentially saying, how do you justify this, perpetuating your body image to people out there, to everybody else in the world, since your social media following is so massive. And the answer was, well, it is a lot of work. Right, it is a lot of work to reach this ideal and this beauty level, and I find that a bit facetious, just because of the fact that if you're in a certain social structure, and if you have money, I think everything is can be possible in that way. But the point is, it's not achievable for a lot of us. And it seems to me that your research is, by being so incredibly important, is sort of like trying to deprogram something that is so inherent in society.
Yeah.
So how would you comment on that? Like, what do you think is our responsibility? I don't know, as normal people, as celebrities, social media, what is the responsibility, and how can we change this, perhaps?
Yeah.
I mean, if you were the queen of the world for a day, something like that.
That would be wonderful. Yeah, no, that's very true, because this is something that we've heard as well from people taking part in our studies. Like, it's very easy to develop this mindset within the context of a study or taking part in a project, but it's very difficult then when you go out in the world and are again bombarded with these messages, for instance from the Kardashians, about what a perfect body should be, which is indeed like very unrealistic for most people to achieve. And it's also not fair to portray that message that you can achieve it too, because of all of the wealth that they have and the position. But I do think like there are other people out there who are fighting back, let's say, and providing counter messages. One person that I really, really admire is Jamila Jamil. I don't know if you know her from the I Weigh campaign, and she's known for her role in The Good Place. And I love what she's doing, and also like calling out celebrities who are promoting these negative messages. So I think that's really important, to also have people in a position of power who are willing to stand up and say like, no, this is not okay, and this is really harmful. And then on the perspective of like the individual to, we're now doing actually a project where we're talking to women who used to have a very negative body image, but have managed to develop a positive body image over time. And also a message that's coming out of their experiences is that it's an everyday, like an ongoing practice where you always have to be protective of your body image and being aware of the influences. For instance, if you would see this on social media from the Kardashians, that probably you would think, okay, I'm going to unfollow them because it's not giving me, like, it's not good for my body image. And then following other people who promote more body diversity and body positivity, or just something not even related to body image. So constantly yourself being protective of your body image and of your well-being, and being committed to that. All of the women also describe like just having to have this commitment to myself, irrespective of what other people think of me, and learning to accept and love my body the way it is. But yeah, that's very difficult. It's easier said than done. They also speak about the importance of surrounding themselves with other people who are like-minded. So for instance, like, and this is not only in this project I'm doing, but in another study led by Kristina Holmqvist Guittario in Sweden, they did a similar study, and there they also found that the participants describe it's so important to surround yourself with like-minded people who are not at all appearance focused and who accept you and love you for who you are, so that you can in some way shape your environment, that you're less bombarded with negative messages, but are instead around people who build you up and who make you feel good about yourself and love and respect yourself. So those are just a few things, but it's definitely a very difficult, unfortunately we cannot change the world with with our experiment, and it takes time. Yeah.
No, it's a very important it's very important what you're saying. I mean, the thing is that we have been. I mean, I grew up in several different cultures, for example, and I've seen the different norms that are expected of women and of men, and the programming that how you're never good enough for a certain sort of image, and it's superficial. It is unfair, and there is a lot of, like I said, deprogram that needs to be done. So I'm really grateful for what you're doing, because I think that it is so important, especially for the next generation, to just reject these norms, I would say, and just basically create a kinder and more empathic world for no matter what you look like.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for the stuff that you're doing, and I wish you all the best for your future research lines.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica, for your time today. I really appreciate it, and I hope that we get to hear from you, in the future to talk more about this exciting work.
Thank you. I hope so too. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.